Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing good on this Tuesday. I want to talk a little bit about this offense, but first, before I get into the numbers here, Hawks Nest stream tonight, 7 o'clock p.m. It's going to be over on the Hawks Nest channel tonight. We're going to do Rams post game. We're going to talk about probably the Packers Lions game some because that was obviously huge for us. We're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff. I'm sure like Kingsbury. We're just going to talk about where things sit as a Seahawks fan right now and basically start moving into the postseason. So if you want to watch that stream, get on over to the Hawks Nest channel. Just put in the Hawks Nest into the YouTube search bar, go sub them up. And tonight we will be talking about the Seahawks and where things stand going into the playoffs. So head on over there, 7 o'clock Pacific. You guys know how we do things by now in all likelihood. Hope to see you there. Okay, so now that the regular season is completely over, every team has played all their games except for, I guess, the Bills and Bengals, but that doesn't really pertain to what we're talking about here. Let's take a look at where the Seahawks offense stands because this was the side of the ball that I think is the more interesting side because you lose your franchise quarterback for 10 years, you lose your two veteran tackles, you have a second year offensive coordinator who did kind of okay that first year, and you're trying to figure out where you stand going forward with some of these new pieces because a lot of the pieces, especially the ones I just mentioned, are young, right? Like Waldron is very young for an offensive coordinator. I mean, there are some that are younger, but he's relatively new. The tackles that you replace the two veterans with are both rookies. They're going to be here a while, and you're trying to figure out where things stand. And I'm happy to report that after all the trials and tribulation of the offseason, after all the shuffling around, after all the movement and questions and preseason yips, I guess you could call them, it was not a great preseason. The Seattle Seahawks offense in 2022 was officially good. Objectively, statistically, undeniably good. What I mean by that is, in terms of points scored, they were in the top 10. They actually ranked ninth. They were ninth in the league in points scored in the year of 2022. In yards, they were, I think, like 13th, which indicates they weren't turning the ball over a lot, and they were relatively efficient with the opportunities that they got. But I think we all care about points, and in terms of points, the offense was good. Not great, but good. And this is where it matters. A lot of people are talking about, the numbers that Geno Smith put up. Oh, he broke the franchise record for yards and completions and attempts and completion percentage or whatever else he did. He broke a lot of franchise records for a single season. But to me, the real test of how competent your quarterback is, how good your quarterback is, or how great he is your team scoring. At the end of the day, that's really what matters here. And our team scored. And just to give you an idea of how this offense stacks up to previous Seahawks offenses, I wanted to take a look at the offenses ever since Pete Carroll got here in 2010, just to see where they ranked. And again, I think it's important to use the yearly rankings, not just points scored, because sometimes offense and defense fluctuates from year to year, and you want to be able to capture that. So in 2021, the Seahawks offense was middle of the road pretty much exactly, 16th. So just barely above average, basically average. So 16th last year. 2020, this was the year they set the franchise record in points, but they actually only ranked 8th. Scoring kind of went crazy this year, I think partially because of COVID. So even though the Seahawks, I think, set a franchise record for points scored in a season, they only ranked 8th. So still top 10 and just barely made the top quarter of the league. But under normal circumstances, especially considering that 05 team the Seahawks had, if you set a franchise record in points, I would expect at least top 3. So that kind of shows you how this year was a little wacky. 2019, the team ranked ninth again. We kind of like that number, which you'll see what I'm talking about when I say that. When I say that in a few minutes here, but we were ninth in the league in 2019. This was the year that Wilson was in the MVP race until the very end of the year. 2018, we were actually tied for 6th. So that's one of our better years. So 2018, this was the year we actually led the league in rushing and rushing attempts. I think we had the best rushing attack in the league this year. And we minimized Wilson's attempts, and he became this hyper efficient, hyper effective in low volume guy this year. So this was the year, the first year with Schottenheimer, actually. That was actually his best season in terms of the offensive output. And the year before that was Bevell's final year, and you can see that the offense was just above average. It was 11th in points scored per game, I believe. This was the year when a lot of things went wrong. The offensive line was probably at its worst. Wilson was in the MVP race. Ultimately, he didn't make the playoffs, so it's hard to win MVP if you're not going to even make the playoffs. But the offense was still roughly above average in 2017, but it wasn't good, and that got Bevell fired. 2016, this was probably the worst offensive year with Wilson. He got hurt in the first game and played through it, and I don't think he was himself until mid-year. We ended up ranked 18th, so a little below average, right near the middle. So still not bad, but definitely a far way away from good, not even really average. The year before, this was the nuclear year. The nuclear year where things just worked, and I still believe 2015 is the best football Wilson ever played and the best play calling that Darrell Bevell ever did. They had 26.5 points a game, again, tied for 4th in the league. This was as good as it got under Carroll. And you have to remember, the year didn't start out great for the offense. The offense had some problems early. So that offense in the second half of the year was probably the best in the league. 2014, they were 10th, so they just barely squeaked into the top 10. So right around that good but not great area of the league. 2013, very similar. They were 9th. Forgive me. They were tied for... hold on, let me make sure I have this right here. Yeah, they were actually tied for 8th, because Green Bay, you can see right above them, both had the exact same number of points scored, so 8th. And then 2012, they were 9th. So a lot of years kind of living in that area where the team is good but not great in terms of scoring, which is where they were this year in 2022. Now, the 2 years before Wilson, when we had Tavares Jackson, Charlie Whitehurst, and Matt Hasselbeck as the main quarterbacks, yeah, I don't need to tell you guys, not very good. It was actually 23rd in 2011 and 23rd in 2010. And when you have washed up Matt Hasselbeck, Tavares Jackson, and Charlie Whitehurst as your quarterbacks, you can't be terribly surprised that your offense is bad. Not terrible. Not completely terrible, but bad. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that if you take a look at the offenses we've had under Carroll, there have been basically 2 offenses that were bad in terms of points scored. And again, I think that's what people really care about at the end of the day. There have been 2 that were about average. And then basically all of the rest of them were good, except for the 2 years it was great, which were 2018 and 2015. We had top 6 offenses both those years. I would call that pretty great. Maybe even a little beyond great, especially 2015, being 4th in points. That's borderline elite. So other than those 2 years, 2018 and 2015, the offense in 2022 was about as good as any of the previous Carroll offenses. This is with a second-year offensive coordinator who had very little experience prior to this season. This is with a career backup journeyman quarterback in Geno Smith, who is in his first full year starting since 2013, I think. This is with 2 rookies at tackle. This is losing your starting running back in week 5 for the whole season. This is working with spare parts in your center and right guard spot. This is not really being able to find a dependable third wide receiver or any depth behind those top receivers for at least a part of the year. And yet here we are in the top 10. Drastic improvement over the previous year when you had veterans at tackle. You had the veteran franchise quarterback. You had these things that you thought would stabilize you. And when you lost those things, even though maybe it was good to lose those things, maybe it was a good idea to move on from Wilson and Dwayne Brown and Shell when you did. You're bringing in rookies and journeymen to replace them. You don't think it's going to get a lot better, but it got a lot better. And at the end of the day, the offense is the reason why we're here right now with a winning record in the postseason. Now, some people are going to rightfully point out that the offense was better in the first half of the year than the second half of the year. The second half of the year, they were probably, I don't even know if they were average. And that's true. That is definitely true. That's a very valid point. The offense got worse as the season went on. But at the end of the day, however you get there is how you get there. I mean, the whole team was better in the first half of the year than the second half of the year. So at the end of the day, it's a body of work. And the body of work in 2022 was good. And next year, you're going to have tackles entering their second season. You're going to either have a new quarterback who you think is more talented than Geno, or you're going to have Geno, after a full year of playing in this offense, you're going to maybe get Rashad Penny back, or at least you're going to bolster that backfield. You're going to bolster that offensive line interior almost certainly. I don't see how you don't get better. And, I mean, this was kind of beyond my expectations. I thought for sure the offense was going to be no better than it was in 2021 because of the perceived downgrades. And when you take a look at it, you take a look at how, just as an example, a team like the Jets that got Dwayne Brown, bottom 4 offense, Brandon Shell not even playing in the NFL this year, I don't think. I don't remember seeing him. And of course, Russell Wilson is the steward of the worst offense in the league, the only offense to not score 17 points a game. You're like, wow, we really moved off those guys at the exact right time because they didn't do nothing to help their new teams. All right, catch you guys later. Go Hawks. The offense is officially good.